these panels each year just seem to get better and better and better, and I think we're in for a real treat this morning. Jay Pausch is on the panel, and I'm going to introduce her more extensively later. She's really the inspiration for this morning. Last year she was here and talked about the death of her husband, and a very emotional panel. And at the end, she said, we didn't talk a lot about caregiving, about what it means to be a caregiver for a loved one, for anyone, for that matter, who has cancer. And Trish Goldsmith said, yes, there's our subject for this year. Before we get rolling, though, I want to say about Bill McGivney and his great helpmate in the sense of being the driving force with Bill for this great organization, Trish Goldsmith. If I had a hat, and I hope they come back, I would take it off to both of you. As Bill says, the cancer guidelines for oncologists accepted around the world now as being the state-of-the-art treatment for a particular cancer, which means, I know that you know, instead of people going out on their own and maybe trying something but not really knowing what the community thinks about it, there it is. And now, not resting on their laurels, they have guidelines for patients, so that if you're a patient, and these are more intelligible from the standpoint of not having to have the training as an oncologist to understand all of them. It's just great work, and I really think we owe you a great debt. All right, now to our panel this morning. Now, my wife, Jan, was a caregiver once. I was diagnosed in 1995 with stage 3 melanoma, and they took out superficial lymph nodes from my right groin, and I wear one of those stockings today. Oh, well, it's not bad, is it? And she told me much later that she cried at some point. Thank goodness she didn't show me that. Well, maybe it's the right thing to do to cry. I'm going to let the panelists talk about their experiences here. But Jan knows something about it, and I'm forever in your debt, dear, because it means so much to have someone who cares, whether they're a family member or whether they're just a wonderful nurse or somebody oncologist, somebody in the cancer community, to people who are stricken with cancer. Now, we have 9 people on the panel. I'm going to introduce each one as I come to them ad seriatim, right down the line, with a simple question. To just get us rolling, I'm going to ask each one to tell us how they suddenly were thrust into this job of being a caregiver. What it was like to wake up one morning or one afternoon and discover that your loved one, or in a couple of instances yourselves, have cancer. And we begin with Bill Cowher, who's the former Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. Now, he was there for, 15 years, Bill? Won the Super Bowl in 2005, was one of the winningest and longest tenured coaches in the NFL. And now, of course, he's an analyst for the CBS Sports Network NFL studio show. Bill, welcome and thank you. And your wife, Kay, who's no longer with us. And you were in this hotel,
13 months ago.
And 4 days before you were thrust into the role. Tell us about the story.
Well, my wife had initially had a spot taken off her left shoulder back in 2007, right when I retired. And it was diagnosed as melanoma, but the root was not that deep, but they still went in, took the sentinel lymph node out and tested it, and it was negative. And so we thought certainly that we had tested it and we caught it early enough. And from that time on, she was very diligent about seeing a skin person every 6 months, and was just totally all about staying out of the sun. I have 3 daughters, and that was very much echoed throughout our house for those years. And we started having some medical issues in the fall of 2010. Ironically, my wife was also diagnosed at that time with atypical Alzheimer's in October, so we were dealing with that a little bit, and I came down here with CBS for the 2011 Super Bowl 2010 season, and was in this hotel. Actually, the CBS crew stayed in the Super Bowl that was here over a year ago, and I was down here all week, and it was probably one of the greatest weeks of my life, just because I was so close to the game, and for the first time after being away from it for 4 years, and having a chance to watch the game from the sideline, it just kind of got my blood going. And I remember walking away from here on that Monday and just thought it was wasn't sure, maybe I'm about ready to get back into it, and went home, and we were going in on Thursday to just take there was a needle biopsy done on her pleura, in her area. No real symptoms, but I thought it was something that was just a mass, and it was just a normal procedure to take out. And on that Friday, going in to do that, I was sitting in a waiting room with her sister, and the guy came out and said, "I need to talk to you." I'll never forget, he just said, "She was right. She's got cancer, and it's all over." And like, what's all over? And he said he's not sure till I do a diagnosis, but it looks like somebody just pulled salt all over her lung. They pulled out a lot of fluid. They needed my permission to put in a catheter into her chest. And I said, just to save her life, and because her lung had filled up with a gallon and a half of water. And
well, Bill, at that point, bang, what was were you frightened? Were you angry? I mean, were you puzzled?
Probably just like shocked, because my wife was at that point, had always been someone like every time she thought something was wrong, I would take her to whatever the doctor was, her mouth. Some thought something was in her mouth, so we went to see more specialists. So it was one of those things like, oh my God, it's like she was right. There was something wrong. And at that point, it just, for that Friday sitting in there, and then when she woke up, it's the thought of like, how do I explain this to her? How do I tell her? Because she was still under. She didn't realize that she's going to wake up and find out she had cancer. Okay, and that was, searching for the right words there was the toughest part.
Hold that thought, because we want to come back to it. Because at the initial point of a cancer diagnosis, that's one of the basic questions. And then later on, as a disease may progress, what do you talk about? What do you say? Our next panelist is Suzanne Daulerio. She's the daughter of the late Patricia Daulerio, who was the first employee of the NCCN, of this National Comprehensive Cancer Network. And her mother passed away in 2009. You were there as a caregiver during the entire 28 months your mother battled lung cancer. And by the way, in honor of Patricia Daulerio and her contributions to NCCN during 14 years of service, and Patricia's loyalty, it is exemplified by an award we recognize NCCN does an employee each year who has that kind of commitment. So Suzanne, when you suddenly were confronted with the job of being a caregiver for your mother, what was that like?
I went into research mode. I was so shocked, and she had just come back from the conference in the NCCN conference in 2007, and we said, you have to do something now, you have to see a doctor. And I was so shocked to hear the diagnosis of non-small cell lung cancer with brain mets that I just went into research mode. So her living room became just piles and piles of articles and clinical trials and holistic alternatives, just anything. So I think that was sort of my job, and my reaction was to sort of rally the family around, what are we going to do now?
Were you optimistic at the beginning? I mean, what was your outlook?
Absolutely, we were optimistic in the beginning, because you don't want to believe that your loved one is a statistic. You want to believe that there's hope. Otherwise, there's just no point in spending time reading that literature. Well, you really do believe that you will have much more time than you sometimes have.
Is that what you and your mother talked about? The fact that, oh, we're going to be okay. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done, but...
We did talk about right away that we wanted to be very aggressive in her cancer treatment. And I think that's the route that we took. I think she was never faltered from that route. We never changed direction. We were just very aggressive till the end. Of course, that came with 3 different kinds of, 3 lines of chemo and 3 major surgeries, and stereotactic radiation to 4 different areas of her body, and numerous weeks of recuperation after each of the surgeries.
What was your emotion like each time this roller coaster went round?
I think that emotionally I just wanted to support her, so whatever she needed. I just did feel part of the time that our relationship, our mother-daughter relationship, was falling away, because her needs, my needs just didn't seem valid anymore. things that were going on in my life didn't seem valid. I was losing my mom. That relationship that you have with your mom as a friend, and it just kind of became, you would, watch what you said, like, to her about, well, planning for next week or planning for next year. You just didn't know where that, there was only so much hope. It only get you so far.
We'll come back to that.